So I am super excited to chat with today's guest, Dr. Sachin Patel, as we are going to be talking about breath work. And so before we dive into that topic, let's go ahead and discuss Dr. Sachin's impressive bio here. So Dr. Sachin Patel is a father, husband, philanthropist, functional medicine practice success coach, speaker, author, breathwork facilitator, and plant medicine advocate. Sachin is convinced that the doctor of the future is the patient and has committed himself to helping others raise their consciousness, activate their inner doctor, and initiate their deepest healing through lifestyle and breathwork. Sachin founded the Living Proof Institute, pioneering a revolutionary approach to patient-centered healthcare. Sachin coaches hundreds of practitioners around the world so that they are empowered to deliver affordable and inspired care to their communities through his Perfect Practice Mentorship Program. And he is an advocate of transferring the healthcare paradigm, and he has devoted his life to the betterment of healthcare for both patients and practitioners. And thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sachin.
Thank you. Please call me Sachin. Eric, it's great to be here. I'm so excited and honored that we get to spend this time together and talk about what I hope people realize is one of the most important things that we do, which is breathe.
Yeah, no, without question. And yeah, so if you could just dive into your background a little bit, Sachin, how did you get so involved with breath work? Because I have listened to some of the other podcasts, and this wasn't always the case. Like if we go back 10 years, you didn't do what you're doing now. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I just want to remind everyone who's listening that we're all on a journey and we all have permission to evolve and grow and learn new things and share new things as well. And that's been the story of my life. So I started off as a chiropractor. I still am. I still believe in the innate forces that guide all living and non-living things, and that there's a universal embodiment of intelligence in every cell that we have, and that is pervasive throughout the entire cosmos. So that belief, you can't take that out of me. You can call me whatever you want. You can call me Dr. Sachin, or you can call me Sachin, but that philosophy will always exist, and it's baked into my DNA now, as I'm sure it is for you, Eric, as well. And so I then started learning about functional medicine, which was essentially similar to chiropractic philosophy, which is get to the root cause. But now we had tools to go a little bit deeper into people's cellular biochemistry, into toxins that we could measure in their blood, or imbalances that we could measure in their stool, in their microbiome. So just going a little bit deeper and getting a little bit more granular into the causes of illness is what functional medicine was for me. But that gets complicated really fast. As I'm sure everyone listening here is aware, there's thousands of tests that are out there. There's tens of thousands of different supplements that are out there. And it can get really confusing and overwhelming for practitioners, but also for patients. So then I began a search and I asked a different question, which is, what if I could get people better without testing them and without supplements, but show them without a shadow of a doubt that they're getting healthier and moving in the right direction? What would that process look like? So we went back to the drawing board and asked that question. If I didn't have supplements at my disposal and I didn't have any lab testing at my disposal, because at one point we didn't have all these things, how would I get somebody healthy? And we realized that we would just simply go back to first principles. This might happen to you, Doc. I know it happens to me often. And that is when somebody comes to you and they've tried everything. They've tried every diet. They've tried different macros. They've tried different micronutrient profiles. They've taken all kinds of different supplements. And they're just like, my digestion still sucks. And the question I'll ask them is, are you even chewing your food? And most of the time, the answer is no. So we realized we were applying, all this advanced testing and supplementation and all this advanced knowledge that we acquire when we take all these trainings. But I realized that my clients were so far down the mountain that these advanced strategies didn't really apply to them. And so we went right back to the basics. And so my mantra is that of Leonardo da Vinci's, which is the greatest sign of sophistication is simplicity. So if the greatest sign of sophistication that I'm aware of is the human body, shouldn't it be simple to take care of? I mean, it shouldn't be complicated, because that would mean that it's not sophisticated. What makes, this software easy to use, our computer easy to use, is what makes it sophisticated. Otherwise, we'd be banging our head against the wall if we had to learn every nuance of how a car works or a computer works in order to be able to use it. So that became my mantra. How do I solve people's most persistent, most chronic, most challenging health issues? How do I apply simplicity to that instead of trying to match the body's complexity? Because if you look at research, one of the things that you'll notice is every year there's more research being done, which actually means every year we know less, right? If we knew it all, there'd be less research happening every year, but we actually know nothing. So the joke's kind of on us. So we went back to first principles, went back to the basics, and then I had to search for what is the zenith of simplicity. So then the question became, okay, well, what do I do the most? Well, here's a fun fact. The thing I do consciously the most is breathe every day. Okay, so the average person breathes more than the steps they take. The average person breathes almost as much as they think. Okay, and so that's one thing. The second thing is that I consume more air than anything else. The average person consumes 30 pounds of air every single day. So I actually eat more with my lungs than I do with my mouth. And so, interesting fun fact, which is kind of fascinating, that we eat 30 pounds of air every day, or we consume 30 pounds of air a day. And then the next thing is that most people can't go more than just 4 to 5 minutes without not breathing. So that should tell us how important it is. Or you can go weeks without eating, you can go days without drinking water, a few days without sleeping, but you can't go more than 5 minutes without breathing. So then, as I started studying breathing from an anatomical standpoint, from a dental standpoint, from a nervous system standpoint, from a environmental standpoint, from a biochemistry standpoint, I realized it's actually the most important thing that we do that nobody's taught us or trained us how to do.
All right, makes sense. Just, I mean, visit the basics, the foundations, and like you said, you can't get any more basic than breathing. And yeah, so thank you for talking about that. So a lot of people, I'm sure, or I would hope a lot of people, because they hear me talk about stress management and blocking out time, whether it's doing deep breathing or meditation or yoga. So would breath work fall under the category of mind body medicine, or is it something completely different? Like, how does it differ? Like, for those who are taking time to meditate or to do yoga or just simply deep breathing, how does breath work differ from those?
Yeah, so there's a spectrum of breathing, right? So there's different ways that we can breathe, cadences that we can breathe, breathing through our nose, breathing through our mouth, left nostril, right nostril, holding our breath on full, holding our breath on empty. The pace at which we breathe. I mean, we can do so many different things with our breath to alter how we feel. And so I like to think of breath work as perhaps almost like uh, on one end of the spectrum, and how we breathe throughout the day 24/7, 99% of the time of the day, that's on the other end of the spectrum. So I look at breathing, and if somebody were to ask, what's my breathing practice? Well, my breathing practice is being conscious about how I breathe throughout the day. The last thing we want is somebody to breathe or take time out of their day, that 10 minutes, do the Wim Hof breathing or holotropic breathing or whatever it might be, and then they breathe unconsciously the rest of the day. The most profound shifts take place based on how we breathe the 99% of the day, not just the 1% that we take out, right? That 51% of your day is about 14 minutes. So we want people to kind of, I want people to focus on how they breathe while they're sleeping, while they're on their computer, while they're exercising, while they're out for a walk, while they're sitting next to their child, while they're trying to go to bed. Those are the things that I like to focus on. And to me, that's also breath work, because the hardest work is raising our awareness and consciousness, right? And bringing our awareness constantly to our breath. That's the work. Once we've done that, the hard part, then the next decision that we make is, how am I going to breathe based on how I want to feel? So just like we grab our steering wheel if we want to change the direction of our car, most of the time when we're driving, the majority of the time people are driving unconsciously, right? You're talking to your spouse, you're listening to the radio, you might be just, in your head having your own thoughts. And then a minute later, you're like, how did I even get here? I wasn't even paying attention, but somehow I got here. So most people, that's how they breathe. They kind of breathe unconsciously. But now imagine that if you want to change directions, right, or there's a turn coming up in the road, you've got to grab that steering wheel. right? And then you decide what direction the car is going to go in. So our breath is the same way. If we want to bring awareness to our breath, then we then ask ourselves, is my breath matching the state that I want my nervous system to be in? So, for example, if I'm eating a meal, I want my nervous system to be calm and relaxed, not all excited. So, my breath should then match a calm and relaxed breathing cadence. If I'm going to go for a jog, right, or if I'm going to go for a run, or if I'm going to lift a heavy set, I come back to my breath, right, grab that steering wheel, and I realize, okay, how do I want to breathe to accomplish this activity? And so we use our breath to then inform our nervous system on where to send blood to. We use our breath to move lymph throughout our body because the diaphragm acts as a pump and it pumps the lymph. Some of our biggest lymph nodes in our body are underneath our diaphragm. We use our breath to inform our nervous system based on emotions. So, for example, if you and I went to a laughing yoga class and we just started laughing for no reason whatsoever, if we did it long enough, just for a couple minutes or so, our breath would inform our nervous system that we're happy and we'd start making happy chemicals. In fact, I can do things like sigh. I can exaggerate sighing, something called a physiologic sigh, and I can create the feeling of relaxation in my body in less than 2 minutes. So our nervous system informs our breath, and our breath informs our nervous system. It's actually a really interesting two-way street. So, for example, if I want someone to, if we think about something like even sobbing, sobbing is a breathing signature that children use, that babies use when they're crying almost uncontrollably, but that's actually how they calm themselves down. So it's the nervous system's way of releasing all that adrenaline is that breathing cadence of sobbing. But what do most parents do is they tell their children to stop crying. So now the child can't use their nervous system and their breath to calm themselves down, and they bury those emotions. So, breathing plays such an important role in so many areas and aspects of our life, and it's one of those things that is so critically essential and does so much more than we think. So it's not just delivering oxygen to our mitochondria, which is one of its functions. It's promoting healthy circulation. It's promoting healthy lymphatic flow. It's promoting a healthy nervous system, right? So it's doing so many other things. And when we breathe correctly, we also create the right, the right environment, particularly in our nose, to purify and cleanse the air, and also create certain molecules. One of those being nitric oxide. So the correct breathing, which is breathing through our nose, and we can certainly talk about that. Has such a profound effect on our physiology because it allows us to make a molecule called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide, it helps increase microcirculation, helps with healing and repair. It also helps with killing viruses and bacteria on contact, and it naturally lowers blood pressure. So breathing also plays a role in our blood pressure as well. Another fun fact about breathing is that the greatest predictor of lifespan is lung capacity. So if you want to live long and healthy and vital and have lots of energy, well, guess what? You need to learn to increase lung capacity, maintain your lung capacity so that as you get older, you still stay vital. In Eastern medicine, they believe that we're born with a certain number of breaths. And so what the yogis do when they want to slow down the aging process, they slow down their breath. And when we slow down our breath, we also, of course, slow down our heart rate as well. But we actually can control our breath. We can't control our heart rate directly, but we can directly control our respiratory rate.
So I have a couple of questions. So one, when it comes to lung capacity, what are some things we could do to increase lung capacity? And then also, when you say that we should breathe through our nose, should we both inhale and exhale through our nose, or just inhale through our nose, exhale through our mouth? So if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. There's 3 gears to breathing. So the majority of the time, we invite people to breathe in and out through their nose, unless they have some sort of obstructive, issue. Of course, there's going to be people listening to this that, for whatever reason, can't breathe through their nose. Here's the thing with the nose: if you don't use it, you lose it. Which means that if you've been a habitual or persistent mouth breather, and you decide today that you're going to start breathing through your nose, it's going to feel restricted because you haven't been using your nose appropriately. So the more you breathe through your nose, the more it will actually open up. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. When they did studies on people who had trachs put in, so breathing tubes put into their throat, what they realized is their nose essentially closed up. Okay. So over time, it'll close up if you don't use it. So expect it. If you're a persistent mouth breather, expect your nose to feel a little bit congested. You can use a lavage to clean it out, or you can use a salt rinse to kind of clean up your sinuses as well. And there's other things that you can do to improve that, but those are good places to start. So, first gear, breathing in and out through our nose. That's how we should be breathing the majority of the time. Next, with mild exertion, or when we're talking, we might find ourselves breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And the third gear is if we're in extreme exertion, fight or flight, then we would be breathing in and out through our mouth. So there's going to be times like if you're running up and down the basketball court and you need to really, breathe in and out quickly, then you might breathe with your mouth open, but then you're going to try to calm your nervous system down and go back to breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then going back down to breathing in and out through your nose. So those are the three gears of the appropriate breathing. Now, increasing lung capacity, one of the best ways and cheapest ways that I've found is to use diaphragmatic exercises where you're basically working the trigger points out of your diaphragm so it expands and contracts appropriately. And then I like encouraging people to use an incentive spirometer. So an incentive spirometer is something that they typically give people when they have pneumonia in the hospital, and it's a way for you to measure and work on improving your lung capacity. So that's a very easy and inexpensive way that people can increase their lung capacity. Blowing up balloons can also be helpful, right? So taking deep breaths in and deep breaths out. And then one other thing to help improve lung capacity and breathing is to strengthen your diaphragm. There's a really easy exercise that people can do. It's called crocodile pose, where you're laying flat on your stomach and with your hands on top of your head like this, laying flat on your stomach, breathing into your belly. So the resistance of your body weight is going to, create resistance in the diaphragm to contract, which is going to then strengthen it as well. If you can't lay on your stomach for whatever reason, you can put textbooks, maybe our old radiology textbooks. You can put them on your stomach and breathe into your belly and lift the books up and down. So those are some ways to increase lung capacity and strengthen the diaphragm as well.
So you mentioned if someone is accustomed to breathing through their mouth, that it might take some time, like they might feel like they're congested. So reasonably, how long on average would it take? Like, so should someone expect where they're inhaling and exhaling through the nose? Like, is it something where if they're practicing on a daily basis, doing it on a daily basis, where they, like 2 or 3 weeks, they should feel comfortable? Is there something where realistically they might expect a few months from now to where they really feel comfortable, and it's almost like, conscious yet unconscious, kind of like you said, like driving, you want to be conscious about it, but still not necessarily constantly thinking about it?
Right. Well, so it's a great question, and the truth is, it absolutely depends on the person. So people, if somebody's a habitual mouth breather, then chances are they have a narrow upper palate. Or in some cases, if somebody sucked their thumb when they were a child, they've pushed their hard palate into their airway, which means now they have a smaller airway to work with. So it's going to depend on, the anatomy of somebody's face. It's also going to depend on their diet and nutrition and, how functional that tissue is and how well their biochemistry is functioning. So I think the correct answer is I don't know, because it's going to vary from person to person. But what I have found is that the body always responds very quickly. So it usually might take, it doesn't have to take long for people to start noticing an improvement. There's other things that people can do, right? So there's certain nasal oils that we can put in our nose to lubricate the nasal passages. And we can also wear breathing strips to open up the nasal passages. So there's other ways that we can enhance or support the anatomy so it becomes easier for us to breathe through our nose. Some people also have challenges with stuffiness. And so there's actually nose clearing exercises that you can do. And simply by taking a deep breath in, followed by a relaxed exhale, and then plugging your nose, letting the CO2 build up, within about a minute or so, your nose will start to unclog automatically. It's almost like magic. So if depending on what's causing that stuffiness, sometimes there's instantaneous solutions, and sometimes there's the solutions maybe a little bit more longer term as well. Some people actually need to have facial airway reconstruction interventions because their airway might be very narrow. So it just depends on what's going on with the person.
And do you find once someone is breathing consistently, inhaling, exhaling through their nose throughout the day, does that automatically happen at night too? Or do you find that most people need to like incorporate mouth tape, and it's just also that's like a process in itself, just try not to breathe at night through the mouth, assuming they don't have like sleep apnea? I don't know if you want to touch upon that, but if there's no like assuming the absence of any, physical obstructions.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 66% of people breathe through their mouth at night. And breathing through our mouth is the number one cause of cavities. Breathing through our mouth, it dries out our mouth, which makes our teeth more prone and our gums more prone to disease and dysfunction. It dries out the microbiome in the mouth and kills the healthy bacteria, which help us make nitric oxide, which naturally helps lower blood pressure. It also is important to note that our mouth is the dirtiest part of our body, and sleep should be the most rejuvenating thing that we do. So, if we're going to consume about 10 pounds of air while we're sleeping, we don't want that air to be going through our mouth. We want that air going through our nose because our nose is going to filter the particulate. It's going to temperature regulate the air. It's going to pressure regulate the air. It's going to recapture the moisture that we would normally lose. It's going to act as a antidiuretic, which means that people who breathe through their mouth at night are more likely to wake up in the middle of the night to use a bathroom. So we want to ensure that people are breathing through their nose at night for a variety of different reasons. The other thing to note is that the most parasympathetic healing thing that we do is sleep, which means that we want our breathing cadence and we want our nervous system to be informed that we're in a safe and relaxed state. And a safe and relaxed state is us breathing through our nose. We would be normally breathing through our mouth in a fight or flight type of situation. So many times people don't get restorative sleep because while they were laying there, their body was trying to repair, but their nervous system never got into the deepest stages of healing by being more parasympathetic. This is why people wake up and they're more tired in the morning than when they went to sleep. Because if you were breathing, let's say somebody had apnea and their breathing stopped in the middle of the night, or somebody was breathing, like imagine somebody snoring all night. Imagine them breathing like that during the day. Of course, you're going to feel
Yeah.
tired, right? You're going to feel more tired than when you went to bed because you weren't breathing like that for the last 8 hours. Some people wake up and their blood sugar is high, no matter how perfect their diet is, but it's because they were producing so much cortisol while they were sleeping because of the way they were breathing. So the mouth tape acts as an insurance policy. I've been mouth taping for about 3 or 4 years now. And one of the things I noticed, aside from keeping my mouth closed and essentially limiting my snoring, is I realized that I'm not waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. My wife is a much happier camper. And the other thing I noticed is I don't clench my teeth anymore, because what the tape does is the tape keeps my jaw naturally closed. So my jaw muscles don't have to do any work to keep my mouth closed at night. Some people are prone to grinding their teeth. A lot of times that has to do with stress, of course, magnesium deficiency and other things. And I noticed I used to do that. I used to have a bite guard, hated the thing, would never really wear it. It was a big waste of money. And what cured my grinding, I'm sure aside from other things, but what really helped me was the mouth taping, because I didn't have to grind or didn't have to clench my jaw to keep my mouth closed.
So you still use mouth tape, even you said like 3 or 4 years since you've been using it, and you still consistently every night?
Yep, I think I've probably missed less than 5 days in that entire time, and it's because I forgot my mouth tape at home when I was traveling. But other than that, it's been a staple for me. It's like my whole family does it. So my wife, my son, we all mouth tape, and it's profoundly changed our lives and the lives of so many of our clients that we recommend it to.
Yeah. Is there any specific brands, or should people just go on Amazon and do a search for mouth tape?
I use the 3M micropore tape. It's probably not marketed as a mouth tape. specifically, but it's just a surgical tape. There's versions that are for sensitive skin. For some people who have sensitive skin, it works well even with my beard. And you're just applying a vertical strip like this. So you're not sealing your mouth. There's something called hostage tape, and that kind of seals the whole person, that seals the person's mouth. That's not the purpose of the tape. The purpose of the tape is just to keep your mouth closed and relaxed. Um, and you can still talk if you need to. You can still breathe through your mouth if you need to. So you're not trying to like hermetically seal the mouth. You're just telling the jaw to stay in that closed position while you sleep. And so the 3M micropore tape is super cheap. It's a couple bucks for a roll. A 10-yard roll will last you many, many months. So it's literally pennies a day to do the most important thing that you do better, right? The most important thing that we do for our healing is we sleep. So how we breathe while we sleep, if that's the other most important thing that we do, then it makes a huge difference. And people notice within a couple of days, they notice a significant improvement in their quality of sleep and how they feel when they wake up in the morning.
And sticking to the topic of sleep, are you, do you believe that we all need a certain amount of sleep? Like, do on average, do we need like the 7 to 8 hours that you hear that most other practitioners, just people in general, recommends? Or you think everybody's different and some people could get away with 6 hours, without a problem consistently?
Yeah, we're all wired a little bit differently. So I know Michael Bruce, who's one of the leading sleep experts, will tell you there's different chronotypes. So some people need a little bit more. I find my wife needs a little bit more sleep than I do, which is not a bad thing. It's just what her body needs. I think so. We need to be intuitive with our sleep. Certainly, you can wear an Aura ring or some sort of sleep tracking device to see if you're getting the quality of sleep. But I would say the best indicator is how do you feel when you wake up in the morning, right? If you've got everything dialed in, your breathing is right, your room is set up right, you've got your sleep hygiene dialed in, and if 6 hours just isn't cutting it for you, listen to your body. I also believe there's seasonality to sleep. I believe that us living here in the northern hemisphere, that now it's winter, so I believe in the winter we should be sleeping a little bit more. It's a season of hibernation. Animals do it as well, except humans, we just keep the same hours and keep plugging away, even though the sun has, everything else around us has changed dramatically. So I believe that in the winter people need more sleep than they would in the summer. So that's another theory. I don't have any evidence or science to back it up, but paying attention to all the animals and what they're doing, they're sleeping a lot more than they do in the summer.
I know we have to wrap things up soon, but I wanted to just for a couple of minutes talk about circadian rhythm and just what are some quick tips you would recommend to reset someone's circadian rhythm? Someone, I mean, just I guess sticking to the topic of sleep. If someone has problems, with just sleeping really, not going to sleep or falling in or staying asleep. Besides the breath work and the mouth taping, do you just recommend getting regular sun exposure, like first thing in the morning? Just making sure the room's completely dark. Like, what are your thoughts about, like staying off of electronics before going to bed?
Yeah. So I hate to be the bad guy, but I think there's like some really important things that people can take away from what I'm about to say that can be really helpful for them. So it's when you tell people not to be on their electronics, right? It almost like shell shocks them because they're like, oh my God, like, what do I do? There is definitely filters that you can get. So on my iPhone, I have an accessibility feature. So when I press my home key, I'm sorry, when I press my power button a few times, my screen actually turns red. It looks like this. Okay, so we can have an accessibility feature on our phones that does that. On your Android phone, you can get an app called Twilight. Twilight will do that as well. And so it takes away the blue light from your devices. You can also on your computer get a product called Flux. It's a free software that automatically adjusts the lighting from your computer monitor to reflect the time of day. So there are kind of some workarounds. You can get blue blocking glasses, which block frequencies of blue and green light out, because normally in the evening there's less of that. Another thing that a lot of times isn't discussed is the directionality of light. So you want to try to avoid overhead lighting after the sun goes down, because the direction of lighting shines on a different part of our retina, the bottom of our retina when it's coming from above, telling us that it's still daytime outside. So what we encourage people to do is use red lights in the evening coming from the ground up. And we actually give all of our clients a special bulb that's a 640 nanometer bulb. It's a red bulb, it's a flicker-free LED. And so what that bulb does is it lowers our cortisol and helps increase our melatonin. As many of you probably know, melatonin isn't just for sleep. It's actually really about it plays a huge role in our immune system health. It's probably one of the most important signaling hormones for our immune system. And so avoiding overhead lighting in the evening, certainly avoiding like daytime spectrum bulbs. I know some people have these like fluorescent type bulbs. Lighting used incorrectly, lighting is actually a weapon. If you look at junk lighting through the same lens that you would look at junk food, you would see that it's almost it's crazy that people use like LEDs and things like that without knowing the potential harm that they're causing to their health. A tungsten bulb, which is the original bulb that was invented by Edison, that bulb is very similar. It's the spectrum of light that it gives off is very similar to a sunset. So it's going to be a much more relaxing light, even though it looks similar. The actual information that your eye is receiving, your nervous system is receiving, is very different than receiving it from an LED bulb. And so there's lots of graphs that you can look up. You can look up sunlight versus LED light spectrum, and you'll see the radical difference and how much information is actually missing from an LED bulb coming to your brain versus a tungsten bulb versus sunlight. So I think that matters. And of course, getting daytime sunlight is a huge thing, especially first hour in the morning. So I always say try to get green and sun before you take your caffeine, right? Usually people want to wait about an hour until they have caffeine. You can also use certain breathing techniques in the morning to increase your energy. So cortisol should be, pretty much highest when we wake up in the morning because that helps us, energizes us. It also helps us raise our blood sugar. That's cortisol's main job, is to raise blood sugar. And so we can also raise cortisol using our breath. There's a special type of breath called bellows breath. And bellows breath is really simple. We just put our hands like this. We forcefully inhale, throwing our hands up in the air, and we forcefully exhale in and out through the nose 30 times like this. You're going to get your heart pumping because every time you breathe in sharply, your lungs expand, contracting your heart, right? Or compressing your heart. And as your diaphragm moves up and down, it's also compressing your heart. So it's going to get your heart pumping. It's going to get your adrenaline up. And it's lovingly also known as yogic coffee. So that could be a great way to kind of energize you in the morning if you need something and you don't want to drink caffeine, or even in the afternoon as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Sachin. And I guess the final question before just telling people where they could find out more about you, and it might tie into this question, is like, what other resources do you recommend for, especially getting back to breath work? I've heard you on other podcasts talk about the book Breathe by James Nestor. And I actually wanted to ask you about that too, because I don't have that book. And I was wondering if it's okay to listen to it on audiobook or if it's something you would just highly recommend getting the print book and actually reading it.
Yeah. So Breath by James Nestor is a book that I gave to every one of my clients in 2020 when it first came out. For me, it's probably been one of the most important books that I've personally ever read. And I absolutely recommend getting the audio version and also the written version as well. James has become a friend over the years, and I've had a chance to go to his retreat. So if you ever have a chance to do that, it's in beautiful locations with beautiful people. So I would definitely look into that as well. Today, Doc, we only literally scratched the surface. So I gave like everyone a bucket out of the ocean of the knowledge that's out there on breathing. And I hope I spark some people's interest in going down this rabbit hole a little bit more. I'll share a link. I actually created, if it's okay with you, I created a bundle called the Ultimate Breathwork Bundle, where it's got my keynotes that I've done on breathing. It's got breathing exercises. There's actually a breathing experience that people can go through for themselves. I know you've gone through it and experienced it. So I've recorded that and I'm happy to share that. It's all absolutely free. They say the best things in life are free, and there's nothing better for you than learning how to breathe. So I want to bring this information and knowledge and awareness to as many people as I can. And so I created this free bundle, which has 5 of my most requested resources. I have a stop snoring guide in there. I have my notes from James's retreat in there. I have the breathing experience in there. I've got my breathing signatures guide in there. And I've got my breathing keynote, and people can request the slides if they want as well. So just a great set of resources for both practitioners and also those of you that are looking to improve and optimize your health.
I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes, but do you want I don't know if you said the website already where they could visit?
I'll share it with you. It's breathworkwithsachin.com.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much. I know you got to go, so I will include that in the link. And there's some other links. I'll include like your Instagram, all the other links that we have, so people could follow you, find out more about you, which I highly recommend. And thank you so much, Sachin. Yeah, like you said, there's so much more that you could cover. But yeah, definitely visit Sachin's website and take advantage of those resources. And again, appreciate everything that you shared with the audience.
My pleasure. It's an absolute honor, and I'm so grateful that we had this time together.